Hello, welcome to our exciting video series, What Will People Think? I'm Sarah Hamdan, and I've written a book called What Will People Think? And it's all about being true to yourself, authentic. And I thought, what better way to celebrate that by interviewing some people who have taken huge risks, who have come into their true, authentic selves, and who just really, really inspire me. And I met Nezha Alaoui at a dinner. We sat together and hit it off, and we just didn't stop talking for 2 hours. This woman is incredible, and I cannot wait to share her story with you. Nessa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. It's an honor to be here.
It's an honor to have you. I adore everything I've learned about you, and I can't wait to hear more. Just for people to get a taste of what you do, you have like 9 lives. um, you are a mother. You also have a hospitality business in Morocco. You also have done a luxury handbag business. You have Women Choice, which is a nonprofit. If I could describe you in a short couple of lines, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I call myself a social entrepreneur because social impact has always been at the core of any one of my business concepts. Um, I'm I'm a mother, as you said, of two daughters, and for me, I am in this 360-degree type of coherent ecosystem where I'm a woman, I empower women, I'm the mothers of the next generation, and it all makes sense. And I would love to share the journey and any insights that can be used by others.
I think one thing that is common with us that we hit off right away, a lot of people talk about empowering women. It feels like this catchphrase, but it's something that we're deeply passionate about. So I was at Google for about 5 years. I was part of an internal team called Women At, and our whole mission was to boost women. So things like encouraging public speaking skills, transition back into jobs after maternity leave, trying to work your way up to promotions. What does women empowerment actually mean to you in the day-to-day or in the action?
Sure. So women empowerment has obviously different facets to it. But when I started this mission, this life mission in 2011, so we're talking about over 13 years ago, I realized that women's economic development, women's financial independence is is really an enabler that allows women to then empower themselves through different facets of what they need, whether it's education, health, or like living gender-based violence. So trying to, for instance, solve gender-based violence when the woman is a mother, she needs to, at the end of the day, have a roof for her kids. There is a lot that she can take on herself to for her family, for her kids, for her community. And if we empower her through economic development and financial independence, then it gives her that choice. Hence, Women Choice, the organization that we have.
I want to go back to the beginning where you started with the UN and photography. So this is a very creative space. Tell me about some of the women you met or some of the cities that you visited when you did humanitarian missions in Africa. And you've built this amazing portfolio that, I mean, I saw by stalking you on Instagram where you have 3 million followers, which is amazing in itself. And I want to talk about that. But tell me about the photography and meeting these women, because when you talk about this gender-based violence, all of that, it's actually real women going through this stuff.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Yes. So yes, when I was on the field for the United Nations for the World Food Program, and I was in Mozambique, in Ethiopia, in Senegal, in Haiti, the women that I met in the rural parts of these countries, who were struggling with their own small business as a micro entrepreneur, or like gathered in a cooperative, I felt that they were strong. I didn't feel, any pity for them. I didn't feel that they were not empowered. They were strong women who they were already leaders, and they were leaders. And that's the other thing, because like we shouldn't think of women leaders as
Yes.
just women at a C-suite level. They were women leaders. They're giving back to their community. They have their own family and tribe that they lead, and it was really inspiring. And I just felt these women have a level of resilience that sometimes I didn't meet in women in Paris or New York or London. And my biggest dream, and I still didn't get to it, and I know I will get to it, it's to create more bridges between that women at the top level executive in New York or Dubai or so on, and the other woman who's a leader of a tribe and who's empowering other women themselves. And I say I didn't get to it, but I somehow did get to it, because today I have women in the C-suite level financing programs that we have, and we're launching one in Kenya. So that's what I wanted to create. It's that bridge. But what I want to get to is I want them to meet. Because if they meet and I have them around the table, like, you're not gonna feel that one is less than the other. They
And
both
it's community.
exactly.
And I mean, I think you're already doing it so beautifully. And I wanted to ask you, how do you get the women to open up to you? Because it's also hard for somebody to admit where they want to be
Where
or
they want
what's holding them
to.
back.
Well, I think for people in general to open up to you, they need to trust you. And they trust you when they really feel that you are doing it yourself. You are taking the risk. You have gone out of that conformist path of the typical women who's just checking the list to be part of what society demands. And that's when they trust you. And when they trust you, they open up to you and your guidance.
And of all the places that you visited, is there one that left a big impression on you that you went back again and again?
Well, the thing is, when you talk about having many lives, I wish I had even more lives, because each one of these places made me want to come back. I have worked on the field with women in several continents. I would sometimes I say Asia is the only one where I haven't really worked, but we are in Asia here.
Yet.
No, but we are in
True.
Asia, in the Arab world. But I've really worked a lot in Africa. I've worked in New York and the US, so in America. And then I worked in Europe as well with women. And none of them was not one that really made me passionate about that woman. And I wish I could come back to work with all of them. Obviously, Morocco is where I come from, and that's the one where I ended up going back over and over. And but I'm so happy to be launching this program in Kenya, because I'm so happy to be going back to sub-Saharan Africa.
I think that's amazing. All the places you've been, all that's left is to go to
So
Antarctica and do a program for penguins. I feel you've done it. I wanted to ask you about traveling to all of these different countries. So the more I travel, because I love it, I do travel writing on the side and I've written for all of these magazines. The more you feel like people are actually really similar in the things that they want and the way that they come together over food. What's your travel style? What places do you like to visit when you travel?
so when I travel, I like to leave the place like if I was living in there. So I'll look into booking a Pilates class, for instance. I would look into yes, so doing some classes is something that I was doing a lot, because it really gave me a sense of feeling like, I live here. I live, for instance, in New York or other places. And then obviously when you get to do social impact, by the way, when you go with a social project, you get to see the country, the place in ways that you can never just experience as a tourist.
Very
So
true.
so yes, that was an amazing part of having a foundation, a nonprofit, and being able to tie some of my travels to even a very small action. uh, which is not a long-term program, but doing a workshop for one day in a village, for instance. So being able to be active with social impact really gets you to know the culture and to be hosted by the local communities.
I love it, and now as you're talking, it's reminding me of my honeymoon. We went to St. Lucia in the Caribbean. The hotels are so beautiful, the resort, but as soon as you step outside, it's like a completely different universe.
Mm.
The way that people are living and everything, and you just feel like you don't get to know the city, the proper, like the real part of the city. So I love that you're getting to know the locals in the right way and
Mhm.
tasting the foods and all of that. Do you feel like people have any, or I'll put it another way, what do you love people to know about Morocco when they visit if they've never been? Because you
Well,
own a hotel
yes.
there, right? Can you
Yes. So definitely it's about knowing the reality of the culture. And so you what the concept is, what Meshad hospitality. So Meshad is from the first syllabus of the names of my daughters, Maysoon and Shadin. And what Meshad hospitality is, it's about offering, because the problematic is you either go to those luxury hotels, but then
Mhm.
you're completely disconnected from the
Exactly.
culture and the reality, or you're going to a small guest house, but then you're losing the luxury part in it. So we're trying to ally both, to have a space that has luxury hospitality practices, but at the same time really connects you to the culture through the people that are working there, but also the everything that we're sourcing, and us trying to organize also for the clients some escapes into social impact experiences through our nonprofit that is active there, because we have the Meshad Foundation and we have Meshad Hospitality, and they're tied. And I think the millennial and even the generation after are really looking for that.
Yeah.
They're no longer wanting to visit places and be in luxury five-star hotels that could be anywhere in the world, enjoy the weather and the some international food. They really want to have an immersion in the local culture, and so that's what we're trying to do.
And where in Morocco is it?
That's in Marrakesh and in Rabat. So Rabat is the capital, and it's really a beautiful city. I was visiting it again for the holidays, and it's growing into a beautiful, well preserved city. And then Marrakesh is so exotic. For anyone that travels from Europe or anywhere in the world, it feels like you're going into the Thousand and One Nights
Oh, wow.
tale. So it's magical.
That's so nice. And what are your top 1 or 2 things for somebody to do? I've never been to Morocco.
You've never been to
No.
Morocco. So yeah, so there are, you have the souks in Marrakesh. Um, the restaurants, the local restaurants, a lot of design. You have in Marrakesh the Museum of Isséran. So big luxury designers, but also painters, poets have been inspired by the city. So I think it's a great place to take a notebook and to explore one's creativity. And then at 60 kilometers from the center, we have a community center that we've been managing since the earthquake that happened in September 2023. And now we're building a more permanent center. So I think definitely tying up your hospitality trip anywhere in the world to a day where you can go and visit a social project, but also participate as a volunteer, is it's just amazing.
I really love that. Sold. I think that sounds great. And
Time.
you grew up in Morocco.
Yes.
And what made you leave?
So what made me leave, I always kept a strong tie to Morocco, but what made me leave is I really wanted to change the world. And I felt that acting in one place was too small. So I guess yes, I was really feeling that I wanted to belong to the world and not to belong to a country.
Mhm.
And it's a rare choice to do it, because usually people leave their country because they have to, or they leave because they find it that there is more opportunity for them. But I guess yes, my ambition on a social impact level was that I also have to go and learn from the best practices of the world, and I have to impact different parts of the world. So that was my biggest motive.
So big dreams made you move out
Yes,
to the US,
yes,
right?
yes.
And where in the US did you go and what did you do?
So I lived in Washington D.C., and that's where my daughters were born.
Yeah.
But for me, DC was a boring city if unless I worked at the White House.
I
And
also never been to DC, by the way.
yes, no, it's a very nice and quiet city, but it's 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 where the White House
Mhm.
is, and I need, if I am somewhere, to be part of the main purpose.
Yeah.
And
Let's
that
vote
I
for
was
president.
rough. Yes. No, actually, my daughter could be, because they were born there. But I don't think that's how you change the most the world nowadays.
No, that's how you ruin it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so lived in Washington D.C. then, but was always going back and forth to Morocco. Then when my daughter were born, I really wanted to take them back to Morocco for them to be close to the Moroccan culture.
Okay. And did they assimilate easily? Was it
Yes,
like
so
language-wise,
yes,
friends-wise?
so they did grow up in Morocco. They were going to an American school, but they spent their first 10 years living in Morocco, and they speak Moroccan Arabic, French, and English, which would have never happened if they were living overseas.
Yeah, true.
Yes.
And it's one of the things that helps you now, knowing all
Yes,
these languages, right?
totally. Yeah.
And then so you went back to Morocco and then
Then out of Morocco, so my daughters were based in Morocco. In their first 10 years, I was very global, traveling to different places where I was invited as a speaker.
was this the UN photography part?
Yes, it was
That was
after
then.
The UN. So I did
Yes.
the UN out of Morocco,
Okay.
and then at the beginning I was a bit global with that perspective of I can change the world, I can be part of the world. But then I learned at some point that you need to focus somewhere
Mm.
to really be able to measure the impact. So there was an exploration time after the United Nations where I was working on my first photography book, Maroc Saharien, Terre d'Inspiration, like Land of Inspiration, with the French publisher. So I was going back and forth to Paris. Then
So
after,
exciting.
yes, so I was really working, taking every phase in my career per project, like project based. Okay, what do I want to do next? Oh, my dream would be to have a book on La Fnac, which was one of the biggest libraries in Paris. So okay, are you gonna write a book? Oh, but I have the photography skills. So my brain was always thinking like that, of trying to find solutions to accomplish a big dream.
Yeah.
And so and be stubborn on the overall vision, but also be very agile on the details. So what do I have? I have the photography. I also got passionate about the desert after my last mission for the United Nations in the desert of Mauritania. So I wanted to explore the desert of Morocco. Then so that was my first book. Then my question was, okay, how am I going to get a French big publisher
Mm.
to accept it? So I said, okay, maybe if I get like 1,000 pre-sold book, then that would make the
Smart.
deal, which is what I negotiated with them, and they were like, yes, of course, if you can get that. So then I went into getting some sponsorship from the government to pre-buy my 1,000 books.
Very smart.
So yeah, so that was the first phase. So that's why when you research, I think you see that I have done different things
But the
that
link.
they're all linked.
Mm.
And most importantly, it was always the focus on how can I accomplish one project and make it happen? And then when you do that and you focus on that, it really gives you the strength and the confidence to think even bigger and to think, if I could do this, then I can do something bigger. And then you keep moving on from project to project. And then you turn back 13 years ago and you realize that you've done so much, because when you do things with passion, then you're a bit hyperactive about it. It's like there is no night or day, there is no weekends, there is no holidays. Everything is part of you accomplishing your project.
I confided in you that it took me a really long time to write my book and feel confident in the fact that I want to be a writer. But I feel like you figured out what you wanted early and you just went full force. Did you ever have a point where you really didn't think it was going to work out and you had to overcome that, or you were worried about what people were going to think, whether it was family and friends? Because from what you said, everything sounds smooth and successful, but I'm sure that there were things on the way.
Yes. Thank you for the question. And thank you for the question, because again, as a very positive person, you tend to not share the hustle of the journey, but that's entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Because as an entrepreneur, if you don't have that capacity to be positive and you look at the challenges more than the achievements, then you get discouraged before, during, and after.
Yeah.
And so the challenge is at every step of the journey, and I can give some example. And the doubt as well can always come back and forth at every time you're going to another phase, because life is evolution, and you either understand that and you evolve with it, or you will succeed and then face a crisis, and then you'll be one of the people that just think that there is an external crisis. Oh, there is an economic crisis, so it's the end of it, so we need to shut down. And during those economic crises, during those wars, during those very difficult time, entrepreneurs will continue to advance and thrive and overcome the challenges.
So be resilient.
Exactly. So so one of the first time where I really had to face the judgment of society was when I was 27 years old, and I decided to take on that shift. And I talk about it in my book, Be Who You Want to Be a Leader. I was a mother of two, so I had my kids. At the age of 24, I had a first business where I developed 12 stores of American brands that I was distributing in Morocco. And I was married to the father of my kids, who's a lovely man that I met in high school. And I just decided to make a shift in my life that I would have made at 40, but I was 27. And of course, everyone around me, from my close family that loved me, to my friends who cared for me, to probably other people in the society. Morocco is very small. I grew up in a family where we were on the spotlight um, since I was a kid. People were not thinking that it was the right move because it was very risky.
What was the move? What was the
Well,
shift?
the move was to leave this first business, to go work for the United Nations, a mission that I didn't have. It was just, this is my decision. I'm gonna go work for the United Nations when you don't have, no one asks you to come work for them, and also to leave the father of my kids and to go through a divorce.
Yeah, that
And
easy.
and and it's not a divorce. Like, even when I went to go to a lawyer, I remember the first lawyer that I had was a woman, and she was telling me, okay, is there violence? Is there cheating? Is there anything dramatic? And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, if I don't do it now, I'm going to do it in few years, and I don't want to. And so I was anticipating certain decisions in my life. And of course, everyone was against it. So for me, when I worked for the United Nations, it was also a huge refuge to stay away from all this.
Yeah.
What will people think? And from that point, then I realized that first of all, I felt more peaceful about my choice. What I wanted was to stay the mother of my kids and to go figure out what my passion was, which my childhood dream was about creating social impact, but I didn't know yet in which form or whatsoever, and how would I make that also financially sustainable. So I didn't know anything. I created Mayshad from the first syllabus of my daughters, which is a company that I have since 2011 and has evolved so many times. And and I knew that I wanted to be the mother of my kids and be the best mother that I could be. That's all I wanted to have as a responsibility, and then go figure out the rest. So so when I went through that time of working for the United Nations, which gave me a step back and was already a first accomplishment, just to get
It is.
that mission, that I left everything to go do it and I could get the mission. I also learned to distance myself from what people could think, because at the end of the day, it's not what's gonna make you happy, and we're kind of slave of that, um yes, of the thinking of others. So you have the ones that anyway are gossipers, and they will always talk bad about everyone no matter what you do. And then you have the people who love you, and they will fear for you to take on any risk.
Yes, they want to protect you.
Exactly. So I don't know if I'm answering the question.
But I was saying I really admire this two-step process that you've done and how you did it at a younger age. And I just want to ask you how you felt that courage to do that. And you had the conviction, like you knew that was the right thing, because I second guessed myself a lot when I was at that age.
So yeah, so it's really not something that was common at that time, at that age and at that time. I think today, 27 years old young ladies, know what they want in life much more.
Mm.
And I'll tell you something, they certainly know better what they don't want. And that's where it starts. Be Who You Want to Be, which is my book. It's not knowing who you want to be is the hardest thing in life.
Yeah.
And it takes a whole journey, but start with really knowing what you don't want. And that will rarely change over time. It could, but if you really don't want something in life, it's not that you will want it and love it later. But so what I was really seeing, and I was always a very, very young observer of women since I was a child. Like, I remember myself at 7 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old, observing other women, young girls with me in school, but also sitting with my mom, when you're 10 years old and her friends come and they're talking and giving like their secrets. They're like sharing, confiding to them, and kind of ignoring me as that little girl who's sitting there. They just
you're
feel like I
listening.
can, yeah, and you're listening. And what I was really seeing and picking up is that there was this thing of time. I remember there was a friend of hers who was really complaining about her relationship. And then time had passed, and I was I was 8 years old, and I was 18 years old,
Still
and then
complaining.
still complaining about the relationship. And then finally, actually, it's not her who left the man, the guy left her. And then she was devastated. And I just thought to myself, like, why did she lose 10 years? I mean, I could see it coming. I was 8 years old, and I could see that whatever happened in that relationship at that stage was really not something that she should forgive or be okay with, because it's not something that you can overcome. There was a bad habit in the
the
relationship, and then it takes you 10 years. And I just, like, things like this, I remember that day I was like, I don't want things to take me 10 years
Yeah.
to figure out. So I felt that, yes, so there was that thing that women would take a lot of time before making choices. And the other thing is what makes us unequal compared to men is that we do have a clock ticking on our head, and men apparently don't have the same clock ticking. So I think as women, we should even be much more
Quicker.
focused exactly on our time. And so these enlightenments that I could use into deciding to really be in an anticipation of my life, and made me want to make that bold choices at an early stage.
Which is amazing, but even now as you're talking and you're saying 10 years, 10 years,
Yes.
it took me 10 years to get this book out, and I always felt like it was external factors. I always, always wanted to write. I always had this story just burning inside me, but pandemic, 2 kids, it's just life coming at you, and then it got to the point where, like your mom's friend, this book needed to come out, and I just said, enough excuses. There's never gonna be enough time. I needed to just sit and write and edit and get this out, and finally it did, but it did take me a while because of life.
Exactly. No, for sure that what you're saying, just simple facts like, okay, COVID or the kids. Yes, life is thrown at us
Mhm.
in a much harder way, much heavier way than it is in general for everyone. And so yes, so we have more responsibilities, we have more to take on, and then and we feel more connected to other factors, and then it's hard, it's tough to make the right decision.
Yeah.
I'm coaching now my daughters who are 14, now 15 and 17. And what I'm teaching them is to be a fast choice maker. Because in reality, in life, making choices is good or wrong, is what gonna eventually get you to making choices fast, and making many choices. That's what gets you into the more successful space. Because if you make a choice,
Like quick
then
decision making
exactly, yeah, exactly, quick decision making. Because if you don't make a choice, life makes a choice for you.
for you.
You understand? Like you have a choice between two alleys, and then you're pushed, because I have this image that it's like we are on a river and there is a current behind us. We're not even walking and deciding to stop. Like life has a current behind that is constantly pushing you. And then you have two different roads. And if you're not making it, the current will take you in one way or another. So when you're not making a choice and something happens in life that you go in a direction, first of all, you and you haven't even learned to if it's the wrong choice, you haven't learned the why you made that choice, and you're more in a passive position
Mhm.
in life. And so making decisions, if they're right, it's good, then you learn that it's right, and you're advancing.
And if
If
it's
it's
wrong,
wrong, you're learning also from it. You're learning from it, but it didn't take you 10 years. It didn't take you 5 years to
yeah,
make that wrong decision. You made it fast. If you made it fast, you will learn fast from it as well. And you'll also make the choice to exit at some point that wrong decision, whether it's a job or a relationship or so on. And then you have the ones that do not want to make the choice. Like, I don't want to marry anyone because I'm scared of that wrong relationship.
yeah,
And then time passes and you end up
alone.
but at the end of the day, exactly, it's better to get in a relationship, to eventually get married, to learn from it, because you learn yourself, you learn about yourself, you learn about what you don't want, and then you get out from it rather than not experiencing anything.
I
So
agree. I
so I
always say done is better than perfect.
exactly. And I think as girls and women, we were raised, especially from that generation, to be scared of failure. And because we're scared of failure, then we're scared to make decision choices, and to take the responsibility of it.
It's true, and I think all of my biggest successes were rooted in, like, 10 failures each leading up to it.
Totally,
But
exactly.
when you were saying about the decision making, I
Yes.
wanted to say I felt that the year I finally started writing this 10 years
Mhm.
ago was a year that was one of my worst. I was pregnant with
That's
my
when you
first
decided to write.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was pregnant with my first child,
Mhm.
and I remember having the baby and then going to my new job, which at that time was Google, so I had to, like, impress and be
Mhm.
on, and I was a new mother and tired,
No, thank
but,
God.
you know, a lot of family emotion and difficult periods. And I remember meeting the new people that I was gonna work with, and they were asking me about my hobbies, and I said, "Well, I like to write, you know, not just for work, but for fun, haha, I'd love to write a book." And one of them, who's become one of my close
Yeah.
friends, Noor, she said to me, "Well, you know, don't put so much pressure on yourself. If you don't end up writing it, it's okay too."
Yeah.
And that was that moment of like, that's not the life I wanna live.
Yeah.
I'm on this earth to tell really great stories, to change perspective about what people think about women, Arab women. I want to tell joyful, happy stories. This has to come out, like non-negotiable. And that's what got me to finally start. And then I got
Mm.
on the rhythm of writing every day,
Mhm.
just 20 minutes at my desk in the morning. Slowly, slowly, again, had second child, pandemic,
Yeah.
stops and starts, and that's why it took me so long. But when you're talking about choices, I had a very clear one to make at that point. Either I could just say, okay, I have a family now. I have a big job. I'm just gonna go this way. Or I could I could do what my heart really wants. And I'm so glad I did because it wouldn't have led to this and to us meeting.
Exactly, and congratulations for your book.
Thank you.
I can't wait to read it. But the title is already so interesting and so compelling. You know that you feel that there must be an amazing story behind. So you made a choice at some point, and that's what we were discussing. It's
And
that
stuff to it.
yes, it's a choice, but that choice always comes with a risk. And I think in your case, was it you stopped your career to I mean to shift. I mean you stopped working in a company to start your career as a writer.
I stopped after I got the book deal.
Okay.
So I had to keep my job. I had to stay a present mother, and somehow I had to find time to shower and to write a book.
And
So for me, it was
mhm.
like I felt like I had to squeeze myself a little bit. It sounds like a lot when I say it now, but you know how like you do things that relax you and bring you joy. It might be exercise, it might be meeting up with friends for dinner and that stuff. To me, that's what writing does for me. Like I disappear into another world, and it's a world where I can control what's happening and I dictate the feelings and I can be creative and play. So it makes me feel really, really good. And I think that's what kept me going.
Uh,
And it's what led to everything else.
mhm.
But for me, it was just being time poor, I think. And then eventually, when I was able to leave the jobs and the corporate world and all of that, now I feel like I'm really myself. Like I'm the Sarah I always wanted to
Wanted
be.
to be.
And it just took me a long time because I thought I needed to have a job or to do just the mom thing or whatever it was. But now I have the confidence to do this and it feels really, really nice. I'd love to ask you this. Along the way, you're a really strong woman. And I know with me, I tend to be quite self reliant. But the reality is, you need people to help you, especially when you're doubtful or you need that extra support. Were there people along the way that kept you in the direction you want to go?
Yes, I mean I was always um very mindful to build relationships, true relationships with people. And in that moment where you're making these big shifts in your life, I sometimes your own family that loves you so much, that fears for you, is not the best support because they will put even more doubts at that moment. Especially if you're going into, you haven't, and it's not, it's just that they fear for you. They fear, they don't want you to take risk. And sometimes you can have even a very passionate parent risk taker, but when it comes to their daughter, they don't want her to fail and take risk and so on.
Protection and love.
Yes. So in that moment, personally, I found more support. It's not that my family took up the support. It's just that I didn't go and seek support from them because I felt it was full of doubts and full of luggage, emotional luggage. And in that specific moment, I prefer to look into external, very distant relationships with mentors, with experts, with whom I could share a little bit what was my plan, whether it was, in the photography field or in the social impact field, and seek guidance from them. And I think for us as women community is very important, and it's also something that we offer to other women with the Women Choice. And I tell the women that we have in our network, it's that community that you can find sometimes out of home, of other women that are differently in that same phase in their life, but in a different way. It's good to feel that you're not alone taking on those bold choices, and it's also the connections that we had when we met. We have different paths, but we recognize our own challenges, our own risk taking throughout our path.
Yeah, game sees game.
Yes.
But it's true. And I think what finally pushed me towards, I think, realizing my dreams is accepting support and help. So for me, my husband has always been number one support. From day one, he's told me, you can do this and write this book. And even during the difficult pandemic days, he would take the kids and let me just sit in the quiet house and write. And he's the one interrupting this video series every 5 minutes to give me direction.
No, I'm not.
And my parents are the ones who, from a young age, told me I could do this, sent me off to university and grad school in the States, told me to travel, internship in the UK, all of that. So they told me, like, the world is your oyster, you got this. But when I wanted to be a writer, they said, are you sure? You have a job at Merrill Lynch. Merrill Lynch is safe. Stay there. And I understand where they're coming from, but it wasn't the kind of support that I think I needed to get to that next step. I remember a year after I had left my job at the bank, I took on a job as a writer, as staff writer at a magazine. Low paid, but I was writing. I was getting my training finally. And my parents at a wedding said, this is our daughter, Sarah. She works at Merrill Lynch. I was like, I left a year ago. The story is over. But now, of course, they're extremely proud. And everyone my dad meets on the street, he's sending them the Amazon link to my book. So they couldn't be more proud. But it's so true what you said about seeking support sometimes outside family. So for me, it came from husband and the fellowship, a community of 8 other writers. The fellowship is by the Emirates Literature Foundation. The director, Ahlam, has become one of my closest friends. And I think through this community of people who understand the ups and downs of this creative form, us finally able to make it.
Sarah, what you're saying is amazing, and I just want to remind our audience that definitely what we've had, and in the space of women's empowerment and what I work on, not a lot of women even have that simple support that we've had.
Yeah.
And they need to understand that we get that doubt as well, by even if you've had that amazing husband at home that supported you when a lot of them either don't have him or have him more as an obstacle, that to have those parents that supported you, and my parents as well were always pushing me forward, even though they feared, but that we can find anyway that community out of our first circle, but also that we can find that strength and resilience in us.
Yeah, and there's something about, for me, like, I always use the analogy of the being pregnant and birthing when it comes to the book. Like, it's a long, hard pregnancy and you have this baby. And then just like in the hospital, when you have the baby, there's the midwives and the nurses. And for me, it was a female doctor. It feels like women got together to support and make sure that I was okay and the baby was fine. And it was exactly the same with this book. So for me, this community of women were the fellows, and I mentioned Ahlam Buluki, Hind Siddiqui, Isabella Bulhul. So these women who are so passionate about having better, more authentic stories come out of the Middle East lift me up until we made it. And it really feels like our collective win. This feels like a Dubai win. I can't even totally own it myself. And even now, before the book is out, they've put me forward. I've done an Emirates podcast. There's so much happening that I couldn't do by myself. So I recognize this community of coming together. And I think that was a big learning for me over the last few years. And it's made me really value my female friendships. I think female friendships are so important.
They are. And so happy to see that we are there, because a lot of women were also saying that they wouldn't find the support in other women. They can find it in other men, but not in other women. But I think women had to walk their path to get to a more confident and powerful level themselves, to be able to be at a stage where they help others. So I'm so happy to see that we are there.
Yeah.
And I've seen the change happen over the past 10 years tremendously.
Yeah. And I mean, what you're doing with Women Choice is that in a very structured way.
Yeah.
You're literally bringing women together from different parts.
Totally. But the number of women 10 years ago was really rare. You know, there were few of these women out there, and it was more of a global network of 100 women throughout the world. When now within one city, we have 10,000 women, because we've seen the shift happen in women's empowerment and women standing up more for their values, learning also that they need to be, it's not about victimization, it's also about being part of your growth and investing in your growth. And so I think we're both positive. So we do see that it is a time where women can support each other. There are some other women that still feel that they don't see that enough. But yes, but I think we are there.
And you work with some amazing brands. So they hire you to put on events and right? So it's also quite corporate. It's not purely social.
No, so we work with corporation because someone needs to finance the social impact. And I've seen that change also over the past decade, because at the beginning, when I was going to pitch them, look, we can, you can sponsor a program, a conference. They didn't have the budget for it, and now they're more and more tied to really acting. But what we give them, it's tangible programs where they can measure the impact on women. I don't like to collaborate over a one-off an event. It's really a program with a series of events and a curriculum and so on.
Can you give me an example of a client who you saw a big change?
Yes. So for instance, 13 years ago, I was pitching to Orange or Veolia. They're French companies. For one is telco, and the other one is energy. And even though they really wanted to do things with us, and we ended up doing things, but it was very small, there wasn't a proper corporate social responsibility department. There wasn't a proper diversity and inclusion department. So the budget the idea was great. The leadership was really embracing and wanting to do something, but then you would just get stuck in the administrative part where they stop answering. And you need to understand in that case why, that it's not, don't take it personal. It's really because even if the leadership said it's exciting and we want, and then when they take you through the system rejects you. Because obviously there isn't it's not organized within the companies. And so my way to overcome the challenge was to tell them, well, maybe you can take it from the marketing department. Maybe I can speak about the fact that you're doing some social impact. And that was the beginning of really corporate social responsibility. And so for that, uh, so I had my agency, which was Mayshad at the time. I told you that Mayshad, has evolved into so many things. And I would go back to my team and I would tell them, okay, let's try to get them some like a whole marketing package and value, and let's also get a press release on the fact that we're gonna do this specific project for them in um, about social impact and green energy and so on. And so that's what got the project being accepted, for instance. And but then it stayed as a culture and a habit in everything that we would be doing in social impact, and that's the American culture as well, which is, yes, you do social impact, but also you need to speak about it.
You work with a lot of American companies.
Now I work with American companies, but before I was pitching this in France. And even now they do communicate about it. But at that time, you had, for instance, Orange had a foundation, so they were more structured. And they were like, no, but we do things, but we don't like to talk about it. And I said, but it's not right, because when you talk about it, it's not about bragging about what the company does. It's also inspiring others to do it. So you're doing it, but you don't want your competitors to know that you're doing it because you don't want them to do the same. It's not right. If you look at it, and this is something why I grew up the social media, and I grew up and I grew everything that allowed me after to be able to achieve more, because the communication component is very important. A lot of the companies that work with me, it's because we have the capacity to communicate on it in a structured way. But I was always feeling comfortable with communication and not seeing it as it is something that is going to blur the message of social impact, meaning that either you do good or you say that you do good, but it's not both of them in the same place. And so overcoming that at an early stage in my career as a social entrepreneur has liberated me to after be okay to be a good communicator on Instagram, be okay to get
Not just
to
okay,
seek
but
press
great.
on me.
I
You
mean, you have 3 million
No,
followers.
but
That's
it's
a lot.
you understand. I'm someone who says super openly. I always had, and I always invested in paying PR agencies
Yeah.
to support the effort of what I was doing and to communicate about it. And so obviously,
So you saw the value and you
exactly,
put money
because
behind it.
exactly, because it's important, and that's what grows your community. And whether it's a community on social media or any sort of community. And today, the partners that I have, such as Mastercard, Logitech, Microsoft, or whatsoever, they
A lot
will
of tech.
also partner a lot of tech and fintech and finance as well, because they are also industries that are more male dominant, and so they have more pressure to change things. And and yes, the fact that we can communicate about the social impact that we make has its importance.
Let me ask you about the Instagram. Do you see real value using it in terms of the marketing and the brand awareness and all of that? Do you have some best practices that you use?
Sure. I would love to share. Yes, so I do see a lot of value. I think even in terms of impact, because impact has many levels, and one of them is also to inspire others. So I think we should all look into and use our social media in as a voice to inspire others, as a mom, as an entrepreneur, as a writer, as whatever, like our wellness. all these different aspects of our life has an importance to others that are struggling with that same thing that you're not struggling with, because you figured out some answers, and you went through a journey that took you where you are at that level, whether it's your workout or your wellness or whatsoever. So so my tip is to look at your Instagram page just as you're the editor of a magazine. So this is my magazine. What is my editorial line? What do I speak about? Is it food, wellness, career? What is my audience? So you need to define what are the different rubrics, just like in a magazine.
Yeah.
And who is my audience? And then when you clarify these two, then the content comes more easily, and it's that consistency that will also make the difference in terms of developing community.
And do you feel like it's a great tool for the brands as well as for some of these women, like a woman in Haiti or a woman in
Yes.
Kenya? Do you feel like it's as accessible on both levels?
It is accessible on both levels. Whatever a woman is trying to she's trying to do as a business, whether she's in a big company, entrepreneur or micro entrepreneur, which is really that woman who's either selling fish in the street or has a store, or being able to communicate on social media is very important for her business. So every woman should have her voice on social media.
Yeah, and just have her voice in general. I think a lot of
Exactly.
women, I'd say a lot of men and women are shy of putting themselves forward. Like we live in an age now where you think everybody wants to be an influencer and all
Yes.
of that, but actually a lot of people are worried what
Yes,
people will think, and they're scared
exactly.
to put themselves out there. But
Yes.
it's
No, I have an example on that, on what will people think.
I'd love to hear it.
Yes. So when I started Instagram, it was 13, 15 years ago. And at that time, putting my kids, so my kids are now 17 and 15. So they were both born. So I guess I started 14 years ago. And exposing them on social media, everyone from their dad that I was going through a divorce with was like, no, it's the evil eye. And he's a big supporter now, and communicates a lot on social media himself to the grandparents, to my own parents, so but it's a phenomenon that a lot of women still have up to now. And it's the same story, that we were discussing earlier, that people will kind of deny you the access of whatever innovative idea you have until you succeed in it. And then, it becomes cool. And then it becomes a trend that everyone wants to embrace. So literally when I started using Instagram, in that same consistency that I'm using it now. So if you look at the density of my stories, we're talking about 14 years ago, it looked very much wrong in society.
Like
It
too
was
much?
very much, no, as a woman, it was like, is she crazy? She's sharing her life, her kids, this, that, even though I was never the person that was posting myself on a bikini or whatsoever, so my content was always the content that it is today. It's not, my content was for other women. So obviously putting myself in a bikini was not going to attract other women. It was going to exactly attract another type of audience. So, but it really seemed, I don't know, like putting yourself out there in a very naked way.
Yeah, it is, because it's inviting judgment. Like
Exactly,
someone might
but
say,
now,
oh, no.
now it's so normal. Everyone does it.
Yeah,
Even
very true.
by having 10 followers, they're communicating as influencers, and they're communicating as much as I'm doing it. But just to tell you, this is an amazing example of how people can think of something is wrong, and then when the masses
Accept it.
accept it, then it becomes something that is normal for everyone to use.
You were an early adopter.
Yes, but that's also what allowed me to grow my community.
Yep.
So it's when you go into what no one is using and or rarely using in terms of as a content creator that you can grow your audience. Or like now it would be on TikTok, for instance.
Today we're so saturated with content. So and everyone's on Instagram, everyone's on YouTube. So and events. There are so many events. So what is your advice now compared to 10, 15 years ago? You're saying it was very different.
Yes. So if you started one of these channels, if you started doing events or communicating on Instagram 10 years ago, you continue, which is what I'm doing. But you're right, even networking events is something that I have identified 4 years ago as being, okay, this is not my main reason, my innovative place. Okay. So you always, but it doesn't mean that you need to be a ghost in those spaces. Events have their importance. Instagram has its importance, but you need to also go where no one is. So you need to do those things, and then it adds up. So today, for me, TikTok is a great place to be because it's still not saturated with the content creators. There is Threads as well, which is something even newer.
I joined yesterday.
Which is a newer place.
It's like Twitter, but it's on Instagram.
Exactly. So it's I think it's also a good place to be and to be consistent with it, and so but social media in general have their importance because we're seeing it in the next generation. I've seen it in my daughters. They're not watching TV. Everything is on their phone.
Yeah. We're all like
Even
that
when
now.
they're watching Netflix, it's on their phone. So we need, as any entrepreneur, we need to or anyone that wants to build a voice, you need to be able to be in those channels that can be digital.
And I think platforms will keep coming up. So that's how
Yes.
tech works. There's always going to be the next new thing.
Yeah.
But I think if you think very thoughtfully about the kind of content you're putting out, it will find the audience, and it's about being consistent. So you've been on Instagram and very consistently for a long time. Like I had my ups and downs with it. I had stops and starts. I've been on it for maybe 7, 8 years. But I haven't grown, let's say, to the same amount because I didn't put that solid intention, time, money into it.
Yes.
But it's a very powerful marketing tool. I think they all are. And now we're doing this video series so that we can talk and let people get to know us a little better, because I think it's about trying different things and seeing where the attention gathers. I wanted to ask you about if a young girl, like if your daughter wanted to get on social media, what would you tell her?
Well, my daughters are on social media, and what I tell them is definitely to not use it just as a personal tool, because everything you put on internet is public, and one day they're gonna apply for Harvard, and one day they're gonna apply for a big job in a big company, and they definitely need to take on their social media as a voice that they're building.
Curated. Yep. And one of the many similarities between us is that we both moved from New York to Dubai. And I'd love to hear about what you feel like life in Dubai is like. Are you happy? Are you settled here? Were there any misconceptions from the US about you moving into the Arab world? Because I know I've received them. I have people asking me questions like, is it safe to walk around at night? Or do you drive your own car? And these questions that I feel are really outdated.
No, yes. Well, I definitely deliberately made the choice to move from New York to Dubai because, first of all, I just thought that it was a much safer space for my daughters, and the second thing is I really wanted to work in the region. But then the, the the topping of it, because I moved for professional reasons, and then I just found a space that is so safe for women and so empowering because, even when we're talking about empowerment, we're not equal when it comes to safety. When you're walking in the streets in Europe and you get mugged in the street, it has much more impact on a woman. We're much more vulnerable than men when it comes to this type of aggression. So Dubai has the safety, it has the openness, it has the amazing opportunities that it gives us as an entrepreneur. So I think it's a great place for women to be able to explore what they want to pursue in terms of whether, like career choice and so on, because it also helps you as a mother with the right support that you can create for yourself here.
Yeah, and I think if you're good at what you do, you can really shine here.
Yes.
Because they're hungry for the right talent.
Yes.
I don't know if I would have had this amazing resume of New York Times and Google and blah 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 if I was in a bigger, more competitive space. I think Dubai's been amazing for me in terms of career, in terms of relationship. I met somebody whose values aligned and our backgrounds are similar. I don't know.
Totally. Yes. And when I was more global and I was a young mother, and I was, as I told you, before moving and establishing myself in New York, I was based out of Morocco, but I was traveling a lot to Paris, coming to Dubai, going to New York because it's the headquarters of the United Nations, and I was invited to speak there and so on. I remember at that time, even 10 years ago, the women that I would meet that are the most in equilibrium with their work-life balance, they were also young mothers, they were also editors and so on, and they were here. And so you do, specifically when we're talking about women, I think we find a lot of successful women here that could advance in the different facets of their lives, because the problem of women throughout the world is that they had to really choose sometimes between career and motherhood, or between having a happy personal life or marriage and so on. And here you feel that the woman in Dubai could, in a harmonious way, develop the different facets of her life.
Yeah, you get the two B's, balance and beaches.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Totally.
I just wanted to ask you a last question from me. What advice do you have for a young woman or a 40-year-old woman who has unrealized dreams to just get over whatever obstacles are in her way, internal, external, what people will think? How do you get over what people will think?
So I'm so happy to be here today, because it's really, if you had to ask me, what is it that really helped you be the most successful in your life? And it was really to get rid at a young age of what people can think of me. Because I just said to myself, I'm someone who will look at myself in the mirror every day, and I put a lot of pressure on myself.
Yeah.
So I do speak to myself, and I have to think right of myself. And I can't, so that's enough. The pressure that I'm going to be putting on myself, and the fact that I need to live a life where I need to feel proud of myself, because at the end of the day, you need to be proud of yourself. That's what will give you the true confidence to be. Anything else is just a fake confidence that can make you feel better in a specific, like in certain situation, but not truly.
When you talk to yourself, what do you say? Because I do affirmations.
Yeah, so when I talk to myself, like for instance, just right now, I'll give you an example. I'm analyzing, okay, what did I do good enough in my business as a mother, in the social impact. So for me, the 31st of December is more of like a self-analyzing check, then also over the summer to start in September. So I do analyze a lot myself.
It's like an audit, right?
Exactly.
I do
It's
it
an
too.
auditing.
End of year and summer.
So when you have that capacity to audit yourself, do not add yourself the pressure of what other people can think, because there will always be the people that will be negative about whatever you do, no matter what you do. and these are people who don't love you and you don't want them in your life, they'll be far away. And then in the people that love you and that surround you, there will be mixed feelings according to mixed situation, because there is unconscious bias, because everyone everyone will think something different, depending, like, that objectivity is very rare. Sometimes we lack that objectivity in our own life. So it's important to not give ourselves the weight of what other people can think. You have your family, you're choosing who your husband is, you're choosing, you have your kids. And by the way, also, when I, at the age of 27, decided to break free and not be the victim of the judgment of others, I remember at that time I said, my kids, who were 2 and 4 years old, are going to be the only one judging me, meaning that the limit to my freedom, it's them simply crying about something. Yeah. If one day one of them comes to me and is crying, "Mommy, why are you traveling?" then I would stay. Yeah. You understand? If she's crying, "Okay, why are you doing this?" then I would stay. But guess what? They gave me so much freedom, because I was explaining to them everything that I was going to do. And when I came back from my trips for the United Nations, I was sharing with them everything and the stories. And so they felt part of it. And so the next time when I had to travel again, they were very little, but they didn't feel anguished about the fact that I was leaving, because they were really part of that amazing journey that I was building. And
Yeah, I feel the same way. Whenever I have to travel to the US for meetings with the publisher,
yes,
my kids are excited. My child would draw a fake cover and
they
give it to
would,
me
okay,
as an option, that kind of thing. So they feel like they're part of it, and
that
they're
they're
very,
part
very
of
excited.
it.
And of course, you bring toys back, which helps.
Exactly.
And what's next for you?
So next for me, we're in the beginning of 2025. It's I want to focus on a year in which I have different programs in Saudi, in Kenya, that I have to deliver with my team. So focusing on succeeding that, but also I have a 2030 vision of being able to empower 1 million women across the different programs that we're running, and be able to measure it.
1 million women across the world?
Across the world. Yes, across the world. It's going to be focused a lot in the Arab world and Africa, because that's where we are currently running programs. But most importantly is that ability to build the proper system to be able to track the impact.
Tell me, what would be a dream email or phone call that you get that suddenly puts everything in motion?
Sure, definitely. Well, as I told you, the vision of empowering 1 million women is for 2030, and it takes a lot of hard work, because it's really different micro projects that will gather the impact of 1 million women. But obviously, the big dream is to receive an email or a phone call from a partner that really want to sponsor the entire journey to impacting 1 million women. I believe it exists. I believe that the money is out there, these big partners are there, and it's just for us to be able to tap into one of them. Because they do need partners to implement as well.
I think with your track record, they would be lucky to work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with me today. And I can't tell you how much this means to me. And I'm so inspired by your journey. What people will think of you is that you are fabulous. And I'm just deeply honored to have you as a friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.